All right, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to FPSA's Digital Mindset webinar. Today's fireside chat will explore how AI is being implemented across organizations, what challenges to expect, and how to build a culture that sees AI as an opportunity and not a threat. So as we move through the discussion, I encourage you to submit your questions in the Q&A box at any time. We'll do our best to address them in real time, but if we don't, we'll get to them right away and we'll circle back during the QA portion at the end. But before we dive into today's discussion, I'd like to introduce our speakers. We're very fortunate to be joined by leaders who bring deep expertise and practical experience in applying AI across organizations. So I asked them each to briefly share their role, connection to today's topic, and one area they're most excited to discuss. So let's get to know our panel. Our first speaker is Colin Gerson, who is the Vice President of IT for Americas at Festo. Colin has been driving digital transformation across North and South America, including the launch of Festo's Digital Mindset program, which we're going to talk about today. He's passionate about helping employees at all levels build confidence with AI, and he's leading initiative in areas like prompt engineering, intelligent automation, and cultural adoption of digital tools. So, Colin, could you tell us a little bit more about your connection with today's topic and mention maybe one area you're most excited to cover today?
Sure. And Ben, thank you for having me today. Very exciting topic. Excited to be here. Right. So I'm the Vice President of IT at Festo. So I'm responsible for all topics IT in North and South America. Festo is an industrial automation company, and we are very big in the pneumatics and electric motors space. We do basically industrial automation and also customer solutions for um, the industrial space. Just a quick, Festo's in 60 countries, over 20,000 employees. And so we have quite a reach. My group is part of a global IT organization out of Germany. We are headquartered out of Germany, outside Stuttgart. And what really excites me about this topic is the democratization of IT. I believe that AI is going to democratize IT and bring it to the masses, which is going to industrialize the capacity of all workers from the CEO down. Just that it's just different grades of industrialization of capacity. So for me, really, prompt engineering, which is a starting point, is a big part of that for me, and that will lead to the democratization of the topic, which I do believe in the end has an easy entry for everybody. It's a big opportunity because there's an ease of entry to this space.
Mhm.
That excites me the most.
Oh, that's great. All right. And now this is great. We have Erica, who's Lescourret, who leads the software side. So we have IT, now we're talking software. He leads the software product management at OmniBlue JBT Marel. So Eric's focus is on developing solutions that connect innovation in software and automation with like literally real world needs of food producers. So he brings valuable insight into how AI enabled tools can align with compliance, efficiency, and long-term strategy. So Eric, can you tell us a little bit more about your connection to this topic and maybe mention one area you're most excited to cover today?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Just to follow up on Colin's point, yeah, I'm the head of software. So, from a back office perspective, the software that we build is actually used by probably some of you on the line. And included in that software, we make sure we have some AI capabilities, which is something that I think everybody is starting to use now. Like you said, Colin, everybody's kind of used to ChatGPT now. That's something I use personally. My kids use on a daily basis, so it's starting to be used right now by everybody in the society. So we build that into our software, and then as a person in the back office, also use AI tools to help me be more productive with my job, to be able to access more information quicker. And like Colin said, this is something that sometimes resides within IT. IT is driving those initiatives within the organization. So as a person working in software to do my job, I use AI tools on a regular basis. And the rest of our organization, actually, not just software, but HR people, engineers, service techs, and that's something that help us again be more efficient in our job with a with a constant pressure to maybe to do more with less, and that's a tool that we definitely want to use to drive those efficiencies. So I'm excited to be on the line, looking forward to getting some questions as well, because I'd love to hear from the people on this call as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you both. This is going to be a great topic. And today I'm guiding today's conversation as the moderator. I'm Ben Reeder. I'm the director of business development marketing for Weber Smith Associates, and Weber Smith is an engineering and architectural firm in the food and beverage industry. But I'm a big AI nerd, so I love this stuff. So I was super happy to be asked to kind of moderate today. So let's start. So we've heard about your backgrounds and what excites you about this conversation. So let's start with where maybe companies are today. Maybe they're hesitant or cautious. The cultural resistance and fear is certainly real. So I'd like to ask, what cultural barriers do you see in organizations, hesitant to use, AI, and how do you approach these employee fears about job replacement? And what strategies help maybe shift the mindset from fear to opportunity? So, Colin, why don't I start with you? A lot of that question you tell us a little about that.
Sure, pleasure. Yeah, definitely there's a fear of jobs, and this has to be tackled in a grassroots manner, and it has to be treated like cultural change management. In my view, it needs to be formalized. It's grassroots, yet formalized. So, what we have done here at Festo is at a strategic level, at a strategic top level, we've created a program called Digital Mindset. And this has four pillars. It has a formal training of prompt engineering built into it, which we want everybody to take. Maybe some at a beginner level, some take it to an advanced level, but everyone should have that visibility of what prompt engineering is, which is a baseline, we believe, for the next steps in that digital mindset. The second part we do is we try to create digital champions in the organization. In the old school, we call it super users or key users. Here, we want to create digital champs that can really propagate the spirit of this stuff. And here, because our department has a 360-degree view on the company, we know the players out there, that have that potential, that critical thinking that you need, that lack of fear, go get them attitude that can really champion these technologies and use it and demonstrate it. Then we want to instill institutionally a data-driven decision-making framework. We don't want all decisions to be made by the gut or feelings, although there's always a place for that. But we want to institutionalize data-driven decision-making. And I'd say the fourth pillar of our strategy, our formal strategy, is we want to market successes. People need to see the success stories that are coming from the coworkers around the company. And when those things happen, we have a formal process and different channels to really market the success stories of and use cases that people are using AI in the company. But generally speaking, I think you can overcome this with a formal program with different dimensions like this. It won't happen on its own. It needs to be nurtured. There's fear, lack of trust in the data, and a lack of critical thinking, frankly. You need to have critical thinking. AI forces people to think about the problem they're trying to solve and then work backwards how you get there. And that is something new to a lot of people, but it's a beautiful part of AI. What are you trying to solve and how do you get there? How do you prompt this system to get there? And so critical thinking is a skill set that it exercises. So we're excited for that. But I do think it has to be formalized on a grassroots level to make cultural change.
Yeah, that's great insight. Critical thinking, I think, is obviously going to be a big strategic part of any leaps and bounds for the user. So Eric, let's hear your opinion. What kind of how are you approaching like this fear for some folks and helping them shift the mindset when rolling out?
I would say probably lead by example.
It's a great one.
We also had some early adopters and champions, people that, to your point, Colin, that people that are already very data driven anyways. So there's already a trust factor there for them. So those are the ones that would typically gravitate towards those kind of tools. So JBT Marel, I don't know if you're familiar, but JBT acquired, merged with Marel last year. So we came from, with different cultures, but we were both in that journey. And it was interesting because we were both trying to, leverage AI tools. On the JBT side, we had our own internal AI. We still have our internal AI. It's called Alex. It's based on the ChatGPT engine. And we started having, to your point, Colin, we had to have some people, some champions in different businesses to drive some prompt already preset, to kind of help people when they go into the chat, to drive them towards specific use cases that we already identified from a business perspective, the workflows, the things that are the tasks that are very repetitive, things that we know that people do manually constantly, and things that we could, help them do faster and quicker across the organization, use those prompts and AIs. And we have thousands of, cases now, that's being utilized. So we track that. And then the first thing people see when they go into our chatbot is the number of people using it. So it's very motivating for people to see that, right? The fact that there's a lot of people using it. So it's great. We are a Microsoft, type house. We do quite a bit of work with Microsoft on different projects, including on my side, on the software side. But Copilot, is something that we use. The good thing with Copilot is they already built, all those prompts and the way they can go and capture data information in other sources of information that may not exist in some other platform. So if you already use, Microsoft Outlook, if you use SharePoint, if you use Teams, if you use, which is all Microsoft products, Copilot has done a really good job to make that experience super easy to use, as easy as what my kid used, ChatGPT, so I need to make sure they don't cheat with ChatGPT. But it's Microsoft has done a really good job with the experience to make it very accessible. So it's very seamless. A lot of people use it. I mean, I was at a workshop in Europe last week with our leadership, and we all use Copilot. We use that to do our notes. We use that to create some summaries. We use that to create, PowerPoints, and that's saving us like hours. So instead of spending hours trying to use the right templates for the PowerPoint or trying to put together the notes, we use our brain, on other things, things that are much more value add. So we try to replace those mundane, non-value tasks using those type of AI tools, and it works. It absolutely works. So I think it's starting with that, because that's where you're going to get more and more, easy entry point to adopt those tools. And then you can start going into some really more complicated type of AI, because AI is such a broad term. So I think start very basic, start with things that would be obvious to the user that would help their job be more efficient, relieve the stress from the pressure they have to meet timelines using those tools. It does help and it does work. And then from there, you can go into way more, generative AI and predictive. And I mean, you talk about LLM models. I mean, you can go crazy with that stuff. And that would require, depending on the level of, knowledge, I'm guessing the people on this call are not, data scientists. But, if you want to get to that level, that's something you really need to do, is really get people, like you said, Colin, prompt engineers or people that really know their stuff. Make sure you give them the right requirements, be very clear on what you're trying to solve, the problems you're trying to solve, and then give those requirements to the people that can actually build the tool for you. Don't be stressed with that. There's people out there that are very familiar with those tools that can build what you need to help you achieve what you need to do and solve your problems. That was a long answer, but
it's a good answer. No, that makes sense.
Would I be able to just make a follow-up quickly on this resistance topic? On the topic of resistance, one thing that I have found is that I think it's our jobs as AI innovation leaders to delineate the difference between fear, resistance, and reality and truth. So people that have fear or resist can make a lot of claims with, in the organization about that doesn't work or the data's no good or this and that. And I think it's our job as leaders to either confirm that something's off, the data's not right, or be able to find a way to bring truth to what the results are. Yes, it is
Yeah.
working. Yes, it is okay. There's a fear issue here. So I think we have to actively delineate people's feedback. Truth from fiction is very important.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
more thing, Colin, I was going to add to this is um, trust but verify.
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned. I think you don't, to your point, Colin, you always want to make sure it's your AI will only be as good as the context behind it. And that's where it becomes really, really critical. Again, depending on the complexity and the use case for your AI solution. When I was talking about Copilot is built really well, right? The prompt's already pre-built in there. The logic is already, Microsoft has done all the work, right? And it's proven it works. But if you want to start going into machine learning and, large language models, that's where you have, to your point, Colin, you have to have people engaged in the process to make sure that your AI is smart enough to understand the context of your business. And that's where you can't just sit back and say it's going to be perfect, but it's not going to be perfect. So you're going to have to spend a little bit of time with your AI friend to teach that friend, the context and the reality of your business to make sure they don't give you some stupid answers that are way off because the AI is only as smart as what it knows. And just one quick example. It's called the broken leg syndrome when it comes to AI. So you have someone that's going to go to the same restaurant at the same time every Friday, right? So the AI is going to be smart enough to say, well, this coming Friday, that person will actually go to that restaurant at 7 p.m., right? Well, that person breaks its leg in the morning, right? That's your friend. That person will probably not show up on Friday. AI doesn't know. Why? Because it lacks context. Right. So those are the kind of things. This is kind of a simple example, but those are the kind of things you're going to run into with AI, where it's like, oh, that thing is stupid. That data makes no sense. Well, the reason why it doesn't make sense is because that AI doesn't have the context behind it. And that's where you have to have, like Colin said, the prompt engineers, right? The people that really can connect your AI model with the right data, right? So to make sure that, whatever that AI tool that you use will give you the right information. But it does
So
work. I mean, you got to spend the time, but it does work.
yeah, we have our first question here. It kind of goes back to this adoption resistance. This is, how does AI democratization work when the ultimate decision makers are the corporate owners of these AIs? So, and then what are the contingency plans for the workers that these AIs are replacing?
So if you want, I can take that, or
Yeah.
Eric.
Go ahead
Okay.
and I will add to it. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Well, yeah, sure. At some point, decision makers are going to make the decisions on which tools are going to be invested in and what the company will utilize. But there are universal truths behind all these models, and there are principles that are common across all these models. And the democratization is real in that it's not democratization about the decision making of what tools you may or may not use. Democratization in that context is the barriers of entry to using AI is low. Everyone can find their place in this technology. You can be a master, you can be a beginner, but you will find your place. And you have to have the mental agility to do that, to make that leap. So when I say democratization, it is absolutely bringing in people to greater automation, greater information management of data, all those things. It's bringing people closer and deeper into those things. You can chat your way into building apps for yourself now. You had to go to IT for building apps, right? In the past, you can build simple apps, even complex apps, if you're depending what grade of expertise or adventure you want to go. But that is democratization. That is bringing development of software, data analytics, automation to the masses. And where the leaders come in is, what are the tools that are going to be invested in? What are they going to give you to work with? But the rest of it is up to the employee to dive in.
Yeah, I think it's pretty spot on. So let's kind of shift our since we talked a little about like adoption and resistance. What I'm hearing from both of you is that adoption is happening. Resistance is less than you would really what you would think. I think it is already starting to move that way. But so let's look into maybe the like real world cases. So let's on the positive side, right? So we got a little fear mongering, but what applications have made the biggest difference in your workflows? Like actual applications. And have you seen AI support areas beyond the factory floor, such as sales, operations, compliance? I know I'm using on the sales side. And can you share a success story from your organization or any of your clients?
Eric, would you like to go first on this
Yeah, I
one?
think I'm gonna kind of mix the back office with software development,
Yeah, sure.
because I think it makes sense. So I think everyone on this call, I think one thing that we are facing is knowledge leaving our organization, and that's just because of the pure aging population. And so it's become critical for us to be able to keep that knowledge within the company. And
Yeah.
so the way we are developing tools today is to make sure we capture that knowledge. So you're gonna hear knowledge base, right? Where you have the tools that we build are where we make sure that we capture, whether it's when we go to service a machine and we do an inspection, or when we go see a customer and we do a customer visit and we get some feedback, or we create some specific alerts for a specific machine that has a specific problem. You know, all that requires knowledge, right? There's real human beings that are actually fixing stuff. And so we make sure that in everything we do, and there's a race right now, right? Because in the next 10 years, a lot of people in our company that has that knowledge will retire. They're gone, right? And a lot of that stuff is on a piece of paper or maybe somewhere in someone's drawer or drawer or some file somewhere. When those people leave the company, it's gone. You can't find that stuff. So we are already in a race right now to capture all that information, so that when the new generation comes, or we may not find enough people, like scalability is a huge problem. It's a big challenge. We have to support more and more and more machines. We have to expand further and further in the world. We have to compete with more and more companies out there, and we've got to scale. We can't do that with human beings. We can't just double the number of people.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to scale using those tools. So that's another piece that we have to use on a constant basis. And so I don't want to get in too many details, but I was trying to give you a couple examples here, but the way we manage this information, and to be able to reuse it, so that the next person coming in, can type, this is the problem I have this machine, what should I do? Well, it's going to go and check, the inspections we've done in the past with a similar machine, the type of work orders we've had with the similar machines, the type of parts that we had to ship with a similar machine, and the AI will help us capture all that. That's something we just can't do with just a single human person and scale it. We have to use AI tools. If we're not going to use AI tools, you're going to be left in the dust. You're going to become history. I mean, you have to adopt it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to keep up.
Yeah.
I think what Eric is saying is you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? You have to come to that realization that it's here and you got to work with it. Ben, do you want me to just continue on the same vein?
Yeah, just briefly, because I obviously know with workflows, you're kind of putting them in place yourself. Why don't you kind of bring up something that's made a success story or which
Yeah,
organization
some
doing
tangible
when?
use cases.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me just start real quick by saying we also have Microsoft Copilot in our organization, but we really are piloting it right now in test groups. So, as an innovation company, we do like to set different tools on same parallel streams and see where we land. There are different tools that might have different strengths, and we need to know that. So, we're big with Microsoft Copilot. We also use Claude by Anthropic quite a bit, And we also have a lot of our own internal tools that we've built that have these engines behind them as well. So we're trying, just to let you know, from an application standpoint, we're trying out different things. And we're starting to see where the strengths lie in these different tools. In terms of tangible use cases, it's been a miracle worker for us with the tariff situation. As a German automation company, we import a lot. The tariffs policies that have been put in place were perfectly fitting us. So it's, we have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of lines of movements in our ERP system every day. We've gone from individual duties, right, tariffs on materials, to stacked tariffs, where you can have 5, 6 different tariffs on a particular material. You've got to marry that kind of real-time policy information with the movements of your products. So how do you do that? It's not humanly possible at that volume to marry what's the tariff that day, that week, what is the policy, with the actual movements that go in and out of our warehouses or production. So AI is absolutely bridging those worlds and helping people, frankly, do analysis that wouldn't have been able to be done before. It just would not have been. You'd have to hire a very large consulting firm to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do such analysis, which people can now be enabled to do. So tariffs situation is one big one for us. We do a lot of trade show intelligence. We do intelligence and that we hand to our trade show participants so that know what to expect, know what might be coming, probabilities, all that stuff. I'm just going through a little list here. Industry deep dives. If we want to look at getting into an industry, we do a deep dive on industry analysis. Okay, very, very insightful. It can really pull in the ecosystem of a particular industry, and even connect our products to where it can benefit in a particular industry. So it has that type of intelligence that, again, a human being would be very hard to connect quickly. I think one of the biggest ones is lead creation. We use it for lead generation and prospecting. Okay, things that customers that are out there, or potential sales that we would have never known. If you get the right prompting and the right AI usage, you can really start to see the dark side of the moon, as we say, on what sales we're not seeing. And so I would say prospecting and lead generation is also a big one. And of course, the last thing I'd say is, while you're generating a lot of leads and prospects, you need to qualify them, right? You need to be able to qualify a large number of ideas that are being sent. So AI can also help to qualify the leads. You can't have one without the other. We overwhelm. So it all kind of goes in a package. And we see AI basically industrializing our capacity, automating these functions for us in that space.
So one thing I kind of want to bring up on the sales side is, both of you guys are from large organizations, but I'm a one-man shop when my sales, as a salesperson, right? So I have created my own ecosystem that is leveraged by AI. So we use Copilot. So, for example, we've taken our old proposals, the PDFs proposals that were hidden somewhere on a drive, and moved them over so they're accessible, so they can be read by Copilot, right? It also dives into my emails. It dives into my other things. So I can actually use prompting to pull information up doing this research. Like, all these things are accessible to anybody. The level of entry is to anybody. So if it sounds like it's impossible, it's not. You just got to start trying. Even HubSpot, for example, yesterday I needed a report done. So they have an AI prompt in there and says, I need X, Y, and Z. Boom. It actually then formulated exactly the type of report I needed, versus me trying to go in and figure out, okay, this lever, pull this lever to do this thing, pull this lever, the A axis, the Y, all the axis, whatever, and it just did it for me. So it's there and it's coming. And I think that it's accessible to everybody. Is I think we're all kind of going towards.
And that's exactly what I meant by democratization.
Yeah, exactly.
In case it wasn't clear before, but that's exactly the spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only caveat to that I would say is, I think, similar to what you're saying. I was alluding to that earlier, the knowledge base, right? I think we're kind of, how do you democratize a knowledge base and use that using AI tools to be able to share that knowledge across the organization. Yeah. One thing that's important, though, is the challenge is the quality of that data that you're accessing, because that requires to change, right? You can't show up at a customer and just write an inspection report on a piece of paper anymore, right? That means you're going to have to capture that in a language that makes sense because you need to be able to read that, right? So there are some behaviors that need to change in order for the AI tool to be able to use that. So that's something as an organization you need to realize. So there's quite a bit of governance going on there from a business and process perspective, because you're going to have to be much more disciplined in the way you capture that data in order for the AI tool to work.
Yeah. That actually tees up our next question really well.
Oh, okay. I don't even see the questions. I didn't realize that was
No,
coming.
no, it's just a panelist just what it came through the Q&A. It says, is there any type of resistance to AI, and especially the speed by which it is expanding into our lives based on fear, negative or illogic? Don't you think we need to have more oversight over AI and its development in our lives?
Go ahead, Colin.
No, go ahead, Eric, please.
No, so it's funny you're saying this. We have people in the company that were extremely sensitive with being smart using AI, because we don't want to overuse AI because of the amount of power that it requires for those AI engines to work. They're very worried, especially us in Georgia here. We have those big server warehouses, and so people were extremely sensitive to that. So, but back to that question, I think what I was alluding to, you have to have a mindset where everything that you do is something that needs to be able to be shared across the organization. I could see potentially the fear could be that, in the past, it was more of a transactional relational conversation with a customer. It was kind of like, you hang out having a drink with a customer, or you show up, say, hey, how things going? Things are doing well, blah, blah, blah. And you kind of have a verbal conversation. Now, in order for this to work, you have to document that, right? So you have to use specific tool to capture that. I think that's important. The fear, I think the fear is, what I've seen is people that are concerned about removing the common sense, afraid that the AI will replace them and do their job, and we're going to lose that relationship using AI tools. But I don't think that's necessarily the case, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Is we need to make sure that we engage with the right people in the business in order to verify and validate that it works.
Yeah.
And you need to be engaged, and you want to have the naysayers, right? You want to have the people that are fearful to be part of this process. And another thing I'm going to say is we only have limited resources. We have too many problems to solve and not enough resources, right? We all face that. So that's true for AI. So that means that you have to be very, very selective, super selective with the use cases that you want to solve. In order to have those use cases to solve, you have to have those people at the table, the people that are fearful. You want to hear from them. So you need to include them in the process.
So, Colin, what would you say about oversight over AI?
Yeah. So,
Opinion on that?
yeah. So Festo is extremely security driven. We have very, very high security standards. We invest heavily in security and data security. At the same time, I would say that I would recommend companies to not get to a grinding halt when it comes to AI over fears of data security. One of the things that people often come and say, how can I use that system? They're going to have our data. And one of my responses is normally, well, if you're using Office 365, you're using data on the cloud already. So why is it okay for Office 365 with Microsoft to be on the cloud, but not other respectable companies to have your data on the cloud? So it's a little hypocritical, and you have to put it in perspective. So yes, you have to be super vigilant with security, but we need to also not just run in a panic about data security around it, and really pick your partners wisely. And because most likely you're already working in the cloud with a lot of these things. So I think people need to be reminded of that. How we deal with fear, well, we're all about automation, right? We're an industrial automation company. Automation's in our blood. If we're doing physical automation in the warehouse and production, we expect ourselves to be automating and industrializing our capacities in the back office. And we're a growing company, so we're a fast growing company. And so what we say is, this is not about replacing jobs. This is about doing more and industrializing the capacity so that we can live, like Eric said, in a world of constraints, so that you can make who you have produce output and capacity far beyond where we are now. So if we want to grow, and we don't want our costs to grow in a linear fashion with growth, you need to find a way to improve your productivity. So this is not about always cost reduction. It's also about opportunity. It's opportunity. If we're going to grow, we all have to find a new level of productivity. And that's what this industrializes. It industrializes the opportunity for people to take part in growth in a world of constraints.
Yeah.
If I made the security and data governance, sorry, I probably didn't exactly answer that, but it just quickly, as a publicly traded company, we have quite a bit of pressure there from a security perspective. Security is actually our number one priority when it comes to software development. But things that we do is we make sure we keep everything within our own environment. We don't want to. We're super careful, especially when it comes to internal IP and internal, logic and things that we don't want to have in the open, even our code, right? So we use some AI tools for that, and we make sure that we keep that internal. So this is something we don't use open source. So I just want to kind of follow up with Colin here. Yeah, we're super careful with that. So there's certain things where we use open source and others that we keep internal. We're very strict with that.
Yeah, I find that security in most organizations is a high priority, but what I don't think a lot of people realize is it's possible. Like it's possible to secure all this information. It's not
it absolutely is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not. You don't have to fear monger that part of AI, right? I think a lot of people get the fear mongering maybe outside, like it's creating, videos on social media and things like that. But from a business practice, there's a lot of opportunity I find.
I mean, you need to be conscious. You're no different than my kids, right? I mean, my kids use those tools all the time, right? So to your point, social media, they know. My kids know. They're not gonna make pictures or make comments or that. I told you. I mean, once you shared something, it's gone. Everybody has it, and you can't delete it. Even though you have a delete button, it's gonna be imprinted digitally everywhere.
Yeah.
Can't get rid of it. So yes, you gotta be super careful. I mean, that's just the world we live in right now. So
Ben, I'd like to add one thing. So when it comes to governance, I think we also have to acknowledge in a multinational environment that there are different cultures, different policies and procedures in different countries. Our European friends are very, very strong on data sovereignty and protection of data within the EU. Let's call it, on a broad base. So data sovereignty is very important. On the U.S. side, maybe slightly softer on the data sovereignty perspective, not less on the data security. We all want data security, but I think culture and perspective really matters when you're dealing with this stuff. People really do come from different perspectives and angles on this. In the U.S., they might be focused on speed and iterative, innovation around this, where maybe in Europe they are double checking a few things and not being cowboys like in the Americans. In the Americas, let's just say. So I think that we need to respect all the cultures and what I've learned in this process yet again is that there are laws, there are cultures that drive people at different paces with different importances, and everyone does bring valuable pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah. So let's kind of forward think then. What's this outlook? Like, what's the future outlook really look like? Like, how can companies treat AI as a long-term competitive advantage, right? And like, what skills would you say like the next generation needs to have, right? Is it no longer going to school for actual code writing? Is it more prompt engineer? I don't know. So what's the next generation? How should they be developing? And what do you think the most impactful thing is going to be for AI, I'd say like 3 to 5 years?
Should I just take that and then hand it over to Eric, which
Sure.
I'm sure has a very
No, you
in-depth.
go. You go. Yes, I will get
Okay.
the IT go first this time. Yes.
Yeah. I
Okay.
love IT versus software. This is great.
Yeah. So, yeah, for us, it's a journey. Maybe just a little context on the past so that you can understand where this goes. We've been in the game of robotic process automation for a long time. That's basic rule-based automation, right? It's not,
Yeah.
and then we hooked up AI, classical machine learning, let's just say, to the robotic process automation, and we created intelligent automation. Now we're in large language model world, and it's a natural evolutionary step. While we're in the LLM world right now, the next step for us is going to be agentic AI. So basically, what you're doing is you're taking what we use together right now, which is a lot of information, a lot of analytics, a lot of that type of thing. But what is going to be actionable about it? How do you take action off of that intelligence? And that's where the future goes. Agentic AI is nothing more than a fancy word for saying we're going to take the LLM technology, the intelligence, and we're going to make actionable robotics out, computer-based robots or agents out of it, and give it an actionable capability. And so we see the future as being with agentic AI, but you need to go through this journey to get there. There's no hop over, so to speak. And so that's where we see the future of that. And that does begin with a comfort level and an awareness of prompt engineering. We think that that is necessary. And I just want to make a comment to the audience, which is that prompt engineering sounds like a very technical word, but if you're chatting with any chatbot, you're prompt engineering. Okay, you might be doing it at the most basic level possible, but there are masters of that. So there's all kinds of grades of prompt engineering, which will take you from robotic process automation all the way to agentic AI. So what I would say, and I say the same thing to my kids in college, which is when they tell you in school, don't use it, I tell them wrong. Make it your digital partner, because in the future, employers are going to want people that can industrialize their capacity with a strong affinity and comfort with an AI tool. And I think that that's the mindset and the skill set. Critical thinking, ease of comfort with prompting, prompt engineering on whatever given level will lead us to agentic AI in the future.
Yeah. Eric, what would you say? What should we be looking forward to, or how are we bringing the next generation to this?
I would say back to the knowledge base, and every organization has tons of data everywhere. And the problem is to how to turn this data that can be ingested, with those models. And so I would say data engineering, data analyst. I think that's super important. And then the other piece is once you have the data models figured out, when you can ingest the data correctly into your AI systems, what's missing is the context, behind, what you're trying to accomplish with an AI tool. And that's where I would say, people that are very familiar with, it's just people close to their customers, and people that understand, what pain they're going through on a daily basis, what makes them stressed, what are the things that, we need to help them with using those type of tools, the workflows, and people that can articulate that. Yeah, I think it's just a combination of both. Yeah, that would be my insight.
That's good. I got another question for us from the Q&A board. It's who is the owner of all this data that AI are collecting, and where is it kept?
Eric, would you like to take that one first?
Sure. So we collect data from machines, and we aggregate. So there's a lot of aggregation we do with the data, and we keep that on servers. We have servers in different locations. Like I said, we're a Microsoft outfit. So Microsoft, we're paying Microsoft to keep that data. And so, they have redundancies, and the data can be kept in Europe, can be kept in the US, can be kept in South America. There's servers all over the world. And so Microsoft is doing that. One thing that we have been clear with our customers is from a data ownership. There's a lot, especially in the food business. The food recipes, and there's some quite a bit of data that's very specific, and somewhat kind of IP driven, to be frank, with our customers. So they're super sensitive to that. So they want to make sure that we respect that. The same is true for us. We've gotten some pretty complex algorithms. We got some pretty good logic type things that we've done, and so we own that data. We can share, but we own that piece. So we're trying to be super clear when it comes to transform data versus raw data, and who owns what. Yeah.
Yeah, Ben, for us, our philosophy or our world is that Festo always owns the data. We always own the data.
Yeah.
We're not going to partner with anyone that owns the data. Festo will own the data, but we then have to delineate where's the data sitting, right? You can own the data, but it can sit somewhere else. Those are two different things. So if we're working with Copilot, sure, it's our data, but Microsoft is holding it. If we're working with Anthropic, it's sitting on an Amazon baseline. So it's our data, but Amazon is holding it. I think the lesson of the story is you can't avoid hyperscalers, as we call them, right? And the cloud, so to speak. You have to pick your partners wisely. You have to really pick your partners wisely. And that's who's going to help you secure your data. And it's your data, but your partners aren't holding it most of the time because those are hyperscalers. Internally, it's going to be very hard to generate that type of scale that these compute companies can do. So pick your partners wisely. That's what I would say. But always keep ownership of the data, which I think is by default the model for most companies. You own the data, but someone else keeps it. One thing I'd like to say is also be careful when you're working with AI that when you're choosing your partners, you're careful to be clear what you want the models to be trained on and not trained on. So we don't allow our chats, our information to go back to the models to be trained. We don't want that to happen. We don't want Microsoft to have our data to train on, or Anthropic or whoever. So at the beginning, that was a big deal. Maybe the configuration settings were not always there, but it's advanced fast enough now where companies realize they need to put a lot of eloquent settings in place where companies can choose what gets taught back to their model, what doesn't, so that you can own your data and control who sees what.
Yeah, that's a good
There's
point.
one little
Sure.
caveat to that I was going to say is I totally agree with everything in the cloud. We also have some customers out there. Process Solution is the other part of our software division, and solution is on-premise. So there's a lot of business critical on-premise, which I think it's going to be somewhat a little bit different when it comes to on-premise, where we have servers located there, the customers. Security is mostly driven by, the customer themselves, right? So, and then we do quite a bit of logic modeling on the edge, so there's ways to instead of doing that in the cloud, you can do that at the edge. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of share that with you. Maybe I here, but that's definitely something we also need to manage as well.
Yeah. Well, that covers most of our topics. I do have something that kind of goes back a little bit. Someone asked for Colin, considering your extensive experience in automation, could you address the issue of AI and automation replacing human employees, the joblessness, and et cetera, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I'll come back to the point of, are you going to use AI to do cost reductions, or are you going to use AI to help you grow your company with your limited resources or the world of constraints? If your goal is to grow your company and to make advances, hopefully you're valuing your employees and you are giving them the tools to industrialize their capacity and their productivity. And so you don't need to bring on in a linear way the same number of employees that matches your growth, because that's just not a model, I think, for profitability. So you have to kind of turn the the question around to get people to stop thinking about cost reduction and replacement and move it towards enablement. How are you going to enable your existing employees for the growth that you want to have? Now, that doesn't mean you can't have certain companies that might, feel differently about that. But for us, it's about enablement of growth, not about replacement of people.
I would agree with that. Just one comment I wanted to make. I worked in banking in the past, and there have been jobs replaced using automation. When you run invoices, POs, where it used to be a manual task, that has completely been replaced by those type of AI solutions. So I think there are some job positions. I think some industries, that have been impacted more than others. I mean, look at automotive. Or even construction, agriculture. I worked in agriculture. There are plants out there. It's 100% automated. 100%. I was talking to some of our team members. They went to China and they visited a plant. It was a pork plant. Not one human being there at the plant. It was all automated. Now, the question is, what do you do when the machine breaks? Right? So you still need to have people there to fix the machines and maintain them, but it's a different skill set. So there's that. And then there's also, to your point, Colleen, I think there's a lot of, when I alluded to Copilot, some of the tool that we use and the knowledge base, it's absolutely enhancing our ability to scale, right? To be much more efficient, much more productive, and to be able to, we can't find the labor. I mean, in our industry, I don't know if you guys on the phone here, if you're impacted, but we have plants shutting down because they can't find labor for a lot of reasons, right? They just can't find them. So, they're going to have to automate, or we won't be able to feed this country anymore, right? I mean, we're going to have to automate. We're behind, by the way, guys. Our country is behind in automation, especially the food industry. So it's coming. We're going to have to, if you're going to compete with people, all over the world, you're going to have to start automating this.
Mm-hmm. I think, Ben, to this audience, probably a lot of the leadership in this audience is asking, how do I calm people down? How do I not create that fear that you were talking about? And so I don't want to live in a utopian world. And I agree with Eric. There are industries that are prone for some job elimination or maybe change in jobs. It does introduce different needs and different skills, right? You have AI. It might move you more to a critical thinking role. Whatever that is, replacement, change of job, that is going to be a reality, but I don't think it's going to be in mass, and I don't think it's an automatic norm. But I think that leaders on this call need to change the paradigm of the discussion because it's fear-mongering. We're trying to bring the temperature down. And you've got to flip the conversation from cost reduction to opportunity. And like Eric said, we all have trouble finding resources where we want to grow. And you're not just going to invent people. So you've got to turn it into an opportunistic mindset and not just a cost-cutting mindset. Whether that's the true reality or not, as leaders, we need to be playing that song.
Yeah. Honestly, that kind of wraps this up nicely as for our conversation today, because we're about our time anyways. I think we're trying to communicate is positivity on this thing, right? There's opportunity, there's positivity. Don't go with the fear mongering. So, I just want to, this has been fantastic insights from both of you. And so as I wrap up, I want to thank you both for sharing your perspectives, and thank you for joining me today. Obviously it's pretty cool how high level you guys are, and I got you on the call. But also just as a reminder to all the registrants, you're going to receive an email. So if you want to share this internally with your organization, we'd certainly love that for today's recording. But we also hope to see you at our next session, which is next Wednesday. It's Navigating EPR, Turning Packaging Compliance into a Competitive Advantage. So that's going to be October 15th. It's 11:30 Eastern Time. So that is it. Gentlemen, thanks again. Appreciate your insights. Hope to meet you in person someday I saw your organizations both when I was in Vegas for PAC Expo. And I'm going to be at EATS, who is coming up in a couple weeks. That's for FPSAs in Chicago. So get a little plug for them as well. But again, thanks for your time, and we hope everyone on the call found this valuable. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Ben, Eric, a pleasure. Nice seeing
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.